13, 2021. It is now 6:11. And item 1, minutes and agendas. Such a hurry to get this meeting started, I did not pledge, so make sure we start the pledge. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have the minutes of March 16th, 2021 meeting. Anybody have any questions on that? Okay. And then we have the March 26th minutes also. Just need one more minute for that. I think that's something. Yeah. Any questions? I didn't see what I wanted tonight. I just was in a little conversation outside. You did a great thing. That's good. Okay, great. Questions on the April 20th board agenda? We need to review that. So, by the way, any board members, if you want to see the whole list of this book about where we did. That was the question I had on A. The agreement between East Rockland and Rolling River, and because of the work that's going on with that, what's exactly happening with that?
Okay, so yeah, I was going to bring that up at the work session and talk about, but athletics, it's more phys ed classes, but Mr. Barth had approached me and Daily, Mr. Rio, to see if where now that the weather is beautiful, kids and kids here stay inside the gym, there's that field at the river. But spaces to them every year, and so they approached them, and they, I don't believe they discussed a fee, but they discussed minimum fee, which of course we do need as well for insurance purposes. So our PE classes will be able to go over
then decision yet on whether or not they're going to charge this solution I can get them to read. Well, that's what we discussed perhaps. The public spaces obviously will not be available this year. I'm working on that. So each year perhaps bars. Spot, yeah.
It would be good if we get some kind of exchange.
Well, we touched base today, and then we got information that kind of determine what they're looking for.
Okay, anybody? questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
And even if there is a really much larger, and even if there is a still could be a lot of students.
There's,
We'll try to
yep.
negotiate, but I think it's still something that kids need, they need to be outside, better.
We'll leave that with Jack. Okay, moving along. Stated budget. Okay, road extension.
So there was a notice that came out a few weeks ago that we became aware of, and Ms. Lopez had asked me to look into it. Isabel was very well informed, and so there was some information that was shared, because this year the budget vote falls on a Jewish holiday. So the state did give districts the option of applying for change in the budget code so that we would hear with that and the community would be impacted. And so several districts did apply for it, a number of them on Long Island. We would change the budget code to a week sooner. And so we felt that it was something that was not necessary in our community, our population. So we did not pursue that to change the.
Lisa, can we give anybody concerned?
We did not. We did not. I did not. Jackie's office did not. Nor did Mrs. Thank you.
Okay, New York State Department of Health update guidance for schools.
So, this, over the weekend,
That's that we have to change the topic. Right?
yeah,
Yes, about a living document.
Okay.
24 pages, all highlighted and scoured through on Sunday night. As the news said, it was quietly released over the weekend. It was really very interesting. There's really not a lot new. I went through it paragraph by paragraph. So much of it is exactly the same taking place. Of course, the major change that has been in the news was the 3 feet social distancing, as opposed to 6 feet social distancing. However, with that said, much of that 6 feet social distancing does mean 6 feet social distancing. What they've done is they've broken it out in terms of age. So by the younger children, younger children who are cohorted, so kids who are in elementary school classrooms, because they're not mixing during the day, and because they're less likely to contract virus. We feel that it's safer for them, as long as the transmission rate in the area of the county stays at certain levels. So there are 4 designations for the transmission rate under 4%, which is we're at about 4% now, is low transmission rate. So we can decrease the social distancing space in the classrooms. However, when students are eating, they still must be 6 feet apart, and they still, when their masks are 6 feet apart. All adults must be in 6 feet social distancing at all times. So that did not reduce for adults. And it really didn't reduce it for the high school, because there's really a level for high school students, because the transmission level is higher, and also because they're not COVID. And so even though the CDC did not recommend, barriers are not necessarily recommended by the CDC or by the state, we will continue to use those barriers at this time because they are necessary when students are being honest and they still speak in the guidance about mitigation. So one of the other big factors that is expanded is they even felt that instead of barriers, what deters the spread of the virus more than barriers is increased ventilation.
Right.
masks will absolutely continue for everyone. There's no option to not wear masks. Health screeners will continue, and again, for adults, 6 feet social distancing. But there were a lot of recommendations for ventilation. When we get to talk about the Federal American Rescue Plan, that also included one of the categories for us to spend those monies with ventilation. So this is all brand new every day, something new that we have to scour through. So we did discuss it with the cabinet on Monday, we discussed it with the administrators. We are evaluating the recommendations, and we will share our next steps shortly with regard to air filtration devices. We're encouraging teachers to continue to keep windows and doors open. The quiet rules have been sort of relaxed, and we can keep the doors open. Am I correct, Mr. Daly? Sure. We have been, the doors open.
Yes.
Relaxing the quiet rules a little bit because we need to circulate air. So we are going to look at, I know Jackie and Mr. Daly had a conversation today about what some of the options are. Are you ready to report on that?
I can just give you a brief update of what we said. It was a very good discussion. Mr. Daly and I answered. As you know, our bond is coming in, our bidding process has been fantastic. We've been coming in for bidding for most of our projects. And so, heating and ventilation from high school is one of the projects, like the fall of 2022. So for the next bidding, 2023 school year, our ventilation is high school should be complete. But I spoke to him about ventilation elementary. Sarah Avenue, are ventilation in kindergarten and in basement. He feels that we could potentially, if our bids continue to come in, and they coming in, with the use of some kind of stimulus money, which should be able to for the ventilation increase all the units in both elementaries as well. In the same timeline, meaning fall 22-23, that school year, all ventilation will go. And that's huge.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And so we'll continue to focus on that. Our question is going to be cost. It's recommended that we improve our ventilation. Obviously, no school is going to be able to just snap to a plan, get it approved by the state, and change the units, in this year. So the question is, what we do? What is stuff? Where we are right now. Utilizing new events all day and all night, to circulate the disinfectant beads every night, every instructional space with water, and at once it's part of our reentry plan, and we keep the events running, so they're just circulating the disinfectant through the classrooms always. So are we going to be doing that and we open the windows and so we can get all of the new events in? In summer or what we can summer, and then we're a little bit considering that.
Well, there are about 40 some odd that you can see. All these recommendations relate to ventilation and different strategies, many of which were already have in these in place. But one, for instance, that we could look at is considering the use of window and box fans to cross-ventilate rooms to exhaust stale air. Keeping ventilation systems on throughout the night, by which we already did. Bathroom ventilation through the night, air cleaners, making sure that we have the MERV 13 greater filter efficiencies, which we do. So many of them we do, and so again, it's really going through every single and see what can we do with some of this federal stimulus money in the meantime until we upgrade. That's
undoubtedly what we've been doing here so far is excellent as far as there's no major spread in the building. We have locate anything back to the building spreads. So it tells us that, ventilation systems in the worst time of COVID were working. Yeah, yes, we are increasing the amount of students coming back. We'll watch the data as it comes in, and as you're evaluating that part of it, right? We have the money, we'll see where we can go with it. I think it's all a prudent way of looking at the expenditures and how much they're going to need, knowing that we are fully now going into terrific ventilation because we're upgrading our system to revolve ready. So all that being placed, I think we're in terrific shape.
Really lucky. The school district
Really
is
got
very lucky because of our situation with the bond at the moment, and the fact that everything's coming in so low, and a little bit of extra federal stimulus, it was like, we gotta be able to upgrade the entire district's ventilation.
Right.
And a lot of districts cannot say that.
And that
So,
will benefit everyone
it's
beyond.
huge.
You?
Blessing in disguise.
Yes, it is.
So one of the new provisions in the plan, and it's really not new because we already did this, we had to do it then, was to get input from the community on any changes. And we already did that because we had parent surveys, we had faculty surveys, and all the changes that we made in our plan, we really made prior to this. And so we're really actually not making any changes based on this new guidance because we already made a plan to bring back kids. We've already ordered barriers. I think, at first everybody was saying, oh my goodness, did we need the barriers? We need the barriers because we can't cohort the high school, so we can't meet the guidelines for 3 feet. And when you can't meet the 3 feet, then you have to mitigate in some way. So that's why the barriers are important. They will, enhance safety, and of course we'll work on the regulation. So we've taken a conservative approach up until now. I think we will continue to do that, and we'll continue to look at this.
Okay. Moving on with federal
Just
American.
one more thing. I had asked Mrs. Hecht, I think someone had asked me about our numbers as a result of the survey and how many kids are coming back. So these are the, Moni, you just want to go over them quickly for the benefit of anyone listening?
Yeah, absolutely. So these numbers were shared with families throughout our process, and these are now updated and will be the final numbers as of the week of April 26th, when we welcome, at that point, everybody back. So just to highlight overall, we were at 17% fully remote learners district-wide, and now with the option of full on-site instruction will be just under 11% district-wide. So the numbers are listed by grade level of students who are remaining fully remote or who have transitioned to fully remote, because in a couple of cases that's happened. The numbers that are in parentheses are the prior numbers. So for example, Center Avenue kindergarten did not have any fully remote students and continues with 0. First grade, there were 3, and now there will be 1. And so on. So you can see the changes as well as the percentage changes by grade level in each of the buildings. And again, overall district-wide, we are just under 11%, and the high school remains just about 17% overall. And it was at about 20%. Right?
And I just want to repeat, and again, thank everyone, including the board, our central office, our administrators, our teachers, our support staff, because parents obviously have confidence in what we're doing, and we continue to get a lot of positive feedback from families when they ask questions. They always start out by thanking us for what we've done. As Dom said, we've not had any outbreak. We really have reduced. You've not been hearing from me every day. And so, and that reflects what's going on, in the community as well. But I think this shows confidence in our model to have now 10%, 11% district-wide.
That's terrific. Was there anything abnormal that just the one grade there? It's the 10th grade there. It's 27%. It seems like it's up well above every other grade. Was there anything that struck you that, as we got those back, that could be attributed to?
Yeah, I'm not sure anecdotally why that grade is higher. It's a small grade level with 85 students overall.
I saw that,
so
yes, that has an effect.
Yeah,
right
that
away.
has a little effect. And we saw the same thing, for example, in the 5th grade, with a larger percentage, for example, at Center Avenue from the start of the school year, and that's continued, not as high, but also. So some grade levels do have a little bit higher fluctuations. But I'm not sure exactly why.
Just what it is. Okay. Great.
I can ask Mr. Schaefer if he has any other insight. If I do, I'll send him over the update.
Thank you. Okay. So the Federal American Reserve Plan Act, Summer Opportunity.
Okay, so as you know, over vacation, this came out in Newsday over spring break that we would be receiving federal money from the Federal American Rescue Plan Act. We're actually receiving two funding streams. One that's a little over $1 million, and this Federal American Rescue Plan Act, which is, it was in Newsday for 780, but it's actually 766,000 more or less. But it's very, very specific on how that money can be spent and how quickly it needs to be spent. So it is not to supplant anything in the general fund at all. It has to be over and above. It is specifically to support schools based on the impact of COVID. And so the monies can be used for, although there is some flexibility, we do have specific areas that we can allocate the money. And I did write that up in the update, but basically PPE, cleaning supplies, educational technology, which we're in pretty good shape, but of course we can utilize some of that money to support our one-to-one device or any other upgrades in technology can be diverted to that. Mental health services, summer or after-school programs, and again, we want to keep with an eye on not just remedial programs, but enrichment programs to engage students. So if the board has any thoughts on that, we would love to hear that because we're starting to have those conversations. Summer is pretty quick to formulate some really creative models, but we are looking at, Mona will talk a little bit about what we're thinking about, and some of our principals have already made some suggestions for some enrichment classes, maybe coding, something that's STEAM-like, we have to see. But we know that in the fall, this money has to be spent over the next 2 years. It cannot replenish, it can't replace anything that's already been expended, so it has to be new expenditures moving forward. And a minimum of 20% has to be spent on what they call learning loss. And so that would be any kind of program, whether it be remedial, enrichment, or maintaining, because enrichment will enhance students' academic skills as well, just doing it from a little bit different perspective, not the traditional reading and math remedial classes. We can target skills in a more engaging way, because part of what we need to do is engage our students. We need to engage them back into the school, typical school day model, and look at after-school programs. For a long time, we've been talking about doing some after-school enrichment programs, but they're costly. And so now we have the opportunity to do that. And so we'll look to bring those into the fall and plan for those, throughout the fall and winter next year and the year after. Of course, if the funding goes away, we'll have to deal with that then, but maybe these programs will become so important that we can always try to be creative and find ways if they work and the community loves it and wants to continue to support it. So it's really a great opportunity. We're grateful for these funds. Some of the other ways are school building improvements, like we talked about with ventilation and air filtration, so those monies can be spent. Implementation of public health guidance, other activities that are necessary to maintain the operation and continuity of services, and continuing to employ existing staff. So we're not at risk of laying anyone off. We have no reason to do that. So we actually will be, using these funds to pay teachers to run, programs once we design those. And of course, over and over and over again in the wording of the act was activities to address the unique needs of low-income students or students, children with disabilities who have been most impacted. We know there's real equity issues, maybe not as much in East Rockaway as some other communities have been impacted. I'm proud to say that it's a topic of conversation at every administrative meeting, and cabinet is, how are our kids doing? Are there any kids that are not engaged? Is anybody falling off the radar, so to speak? And we have, Mrs. Heck developed an outreach protocol so that we know, we have some kids that are maybe less engaged, but we don't have anyone we've lost. And that's not the case, unfortunately, in a lot of districts. So, but obviously, mental health and more outreach services, supporting community-based programs like the mental health program. So it's really nice to see that so much of what's spoken about in the law are programs that we already have in place. So we can apply those funds for those programs, but also enhance what we're currently doing. So again, it's at least 20% of this learning loss has to be designated. We will need to develop and submit a plan to New York State. We're still waiting for further guidance. As I said, they can be spent the funds over a 2-year period. In addition, we'll be getting some additional special education funding. We don't know what that will be, that will be added to the 611 and 619 federal grants that run out of the special ed office. We do get a nice amount of money, and that's been, that's part of our expected budget and revenue that we get from grants, but that we don't know, but we'll be getting a little bit more.
I just have a question on learning loss. Is there data that they're going to be requiring from us to substantiate learning loss? And then, as that applies to it, I was wondering if that was a requirement, I'm sure that we'll be able to pull some data then and qualify for those, right?
That is required.
Yeah, it's not a requirement. As far as we know, we haven't seen what the plan is going to require, but we already do have data. We have some good data, and we also have some data that's, unfortunate that they're calling it unfinished learning. The kids have just not finished. They've not been able to master the curriculum because of the way it's been delivered. So, we will have some Regents data at the end of the year. We will be administering finals at the high school because we think that data it's important for us to know where our kids fell short. So much of the learning is cumulative, and we need to be able to plant some of these programs, where are the gaps, where are the holes in kids' learning.
That's exactly what I was coming at. I was hoping that we would, do our exams so that we would have that in place. That's great.
Yeah, and we have the NWEA, we have at the elementary level a lot of measures that we use. We have classroom grades and classroom assessments, so we will be looking at all of that to help drive some of these programs.
Great.
But also, as we said the other day, it's so important to get kids back to school so they feel comfortable and that school is fun again. And there's so much learning that can be done in an engaging, fun environment as well. So it's not just skill and drill. But
has there been any thought to surveying the students to ask them what their passions, their interests are, so that they will definitely be moved by whatever is out there?
that's a great idea. That is a great idea. We talked with our principals about it to see what kids have been asking for, what parents have been asking for. We talked to the super PTA, so getting as much information as possible so we can move forward. So I'm just going to turn it over to Mrs. Heck for a moment to talk about some of the summer planning that we're looking at. And again, this is just the first week we go back. And,
Yeah.
Very preliminary, but as we talked about before, we have a secondary summer school program that's already being planned for. It's a 5-week program, 4 days per week, Monday through Thursday, except for the first week, which is the July 4th week, so that week will be Tuesday through Friday. And we run that program for about 3 hours in the morning with 3 one-hour class time sessions planned. So what we're looking to do is extend that beyond just the high school credit recovery and offer K through 8, also additional learning loss coursework and supplemental instruction. So we have a little bit of flexibility in terms of how we offer that. Where the summer school program is 1 hour per course, we can offer this for ELA and math, for example, 2 days per week, 45 minutes to an hour, depending on the grade level. There are a lot of very engaging academic support opportunities out there. Some of them we already used during the school year that we may extend to the summer. Others that we're looking at as new, that students can be engaged in as more of an online and game adaptive activities, while also being supplemented with teacher instruction. And so Again, it's in the very preliminary stages, but I think we'll be, from the data review that we've already been doing and engaging in, we're already identifying where some of the needs are, which students have been affected directly, and then also we can offer some of these programs as supplementary and even enrichment because the programs many times are adapted and can be geared for specific levels of student needs. So we're excited because we know that we do need to address some of those gaps that have occurred. And we also don't want to make it overwhelming because when students have a summer, and so we feel like this 5-week program in July provides that structure, that identified program possibility while still having most of their afternoons and the rest of the summer to engage in fun activities, but also making this somewhat enjoyable.
That's a great, way to approach it because the summer opportunities, the social emotional needs, as we all know, need to be met. And it's a great way to bring them in, with the academics at the same time. As we all know, a lot of summer programs were starting to infuse that before the pandemic. They were starting to give a little recess time or play time during the time together so that the kids had more opportunity to say, you know what, I'm having a little fun here instead of just, being in summer and so on and so forth. So keeping in that respect is terrific. We're hitting both needs, the intellectual, socially, emotional, all that. Great.
And keeping our students connected to schools.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that they have those connections that they come back, even more ready next school year.
Just as an aside, it's not our program, but I know we all know that it's a program that we like space to. I met with Mr. Lawrence today, and he'll be running his summer rec program. I know the community will be very happy to hear that. Preliminary planning meeting. I know our space is going to be tight this summer, but I think it's important to make that available. He was a little hesitant and concerned, but dealing with the COVID practices, but we're going to support as best we can his efforts.
Okay, update on the bond project.
So Mr. Daly is here, and he's really been working very hard to get a lot of emails now every day with updates and lots of questions about colors and looking forward with a lot going on. So we've asked Mr. Daly to update you.
Good evening, it's nice to see you all, and I'll try to keep it brief. We've made a lot of progress in the past couple of weeks. Starting with the bulkhead, as you all know, is complete. We actually started the electric portion of the HVAC upgrade center area. We had, we had the electricians in, and they ran quite a bit of wiring above the strap ceilings. You really won't see it, but all those little areas that we can get done before the summertime, we could jump on the projects we've been trying to do. The exterior masonry, we're going to have a logistics meeting with them. We'd like to try to get them in there, even with some nice weather, to get a jump on the summer as well. We should be having that meeting sometime next week to try to get them going. Here at the high school, obviously, the athletic project is started. Tech is on site, they mobilized. We'll be bringing in an estimated 10,000 cubic yards of fill to fill that field up. And then hopefully, get us in by September. We'll play football this fall. The other projects that are up at state right now are the heating and ventilation system here for the high school, as well as the upgrade of the current family and consumer science rooms, the art room, and the 2 science rooms upstairs on the 2nd floor. They're currently under review. They actually started the engineering review portion of our projects this week. Also, the alterations to the technology building, those projects are up at the state, right next to each other.
Mr. Daly, can I ask you a question? Because I could have missed it, but I know that there originally was a plan to go and visit other schools where the family and consumer science rooms that were recently renovated, and I know because of COVID, that became difficult. So where are we in terms of the design of the science room, the art room, and the family and consumer science room?
Well,
I know we were involving the teachers and the department heads.
Yes, they were involved with the planning stages. We do have some renderings. And the other things, Lucy, maybe we could take a look at some other ones. Sean had some good renderings that I believe are on the website.
So, but no final determination has been made about the actual design of those rooms? Or there has?
Yes, those have been, we could probably tweak them a little bit, but they've gone over it. The art teachers were a big part of that. Richard was a part of that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I know I had heard about it, but didn't hear about it.
what Lisa was saying, is that what was really important to us was that the fact is that, you know, everybody who shares those rooms who's gonna be living in those rooms.
Yes.
Has input into that, we don't bypass that.
We got the new home careers teacher came on board just in time to, put her input in on that area.
I know the art teachers were very
The art
specific
teachers-
about the casework and where the storage would be, and obviously
Yes.
that makes the most sense.
Yes, they were. Yes, they were. And from the renderings, actually, the drawings, they've all picked out wonderful things, and it's really going to be a beautiful project. And again, as Mrs. Spears said before, a lot of these numbers are coming in under what we have budgeted, so we hope to continue that trend and try to get as much done as we possibly can do with this bond.
Maybe at a future work session, we'd be able to see updates, on that actually, like we did see updates on the field as that was progressing.
Absolutely.
I'd like to see the board see that as, the classrooms too.
Absolutely.
Like you're referring to a WIP report, a work in progress report?
Yes.
How often would we be able to see something like that so that we can monitor the progress so that we can actually be on that field playing football come next season? I mean, it's
Much fun.
yeah, I mean, in my industry, we have work in progress reports literally on a weekly basis. I'm not just recommending that. But like you said, maybe on a month by month basis,
Sure.
a very comprehensive report
Project.
would be a great way to manage this.
We actually do have weekly meetings, update meetings.
Mhm.
Now that Ramtech is mobilized and we're starting out there on the field, we're actually starting to get some movement, some projections.
What's the projected end date? Yet, or?
We're hoping to get a football game in there probably late September, early October. We're really shooting for September. If the weather holds and things go well, we're really hoping to get that first couple of weeks of football.
They're hoping to delay.
That's what I was just going to.
Yeah, I would optimally, I'd like to see a nice homecoming game in October.
I know that we're saying we're under budget on everything. Is there an escalation plan in place possibly like this? I'm in construction, so, the client wants something done by, say, September 1st. This is what it costs. This is what it's going to cost by September 1st. Did we even entertain an escalation cost?
I don't believe any of the contracts have that verbiage in there. I know on commercial projects, quite often they do.
Right.
That very rarely in school projects that they have, but sometimes they do have clauses,
Yeah, just out of
bonus
curiosity, I
clauses
didn't know if there was
and that type of thing. No, I don't believe in this case we do. But they have been moving right along. So
Yeah, a lot depends on the weather.
We're supposed to get a couple of days of heavy rain in the next couple of days, so hopefully it blows past and moving on. We'll be giving updates as they come forward. In fact, David and Richard were talking today about the advantage point to possibly take some aerial photos of the field so we can kind of keep a timeline of things as they go.
Just as an update, our construction managers, Bucky's, they will be giving us weekly, if not bi-weekly, project status reports. You haven't been seeing them because we really haven't been doing any projects. The bulkhead was not done by us, that was done by Land Tech. And Bucky's was not overseeing that, but they are overseeing. Now we are starting with the fields. As Mr. Daly says, we do have weekly meetings, but we've already discussed them giving us project updates, and now that multiple projects are starting to roll out, you will be seeing probably, if not weekly, bi-weekly reports will be given to you in your board update package. So it's only because the projects are really just beginning.
Sure.
You're going to see that.
And that's one of the things that when Bucky's
Yeah,
presented,
that's common.
they said they.
Yeah, that's very typical.
Our owners, they represent.
Correct.
They're very, And as far as, escalation, a lot of the problems that we have here in school districts is the timing, trying to work around student schedules. They've been really good, and we have them working at night, we have them planned for the weekends, so they really are, utilizing all the free time they can here on the school district property without interfering with our program. So I think we've got a really good plan in place, but please know that you will start to see those project reports. Now you actually see projects starting, so it's really going to be very exciting.
Are there any concerns with the tech rooms, because of the noise in the back of the fields? Has anybody said anything? Are they okay when they are there?
We haven't had any complaints.
We haven't had any complaints. The big thing right now is the trucks coming in with the fill, but, Land Tech is actually physically escorting each truck as it comes through.
We have had a loss of parking spaces, which is a concern. So Mr. Daly is working with Mr. Schaefer because we did lose the basketball court area, which we had just constructed for extra parking, and now we lost a few more spaces. So we're going to make sure that we have adequate parking. Right?
Yes, I work with,
Can we also speak to Rolling River about that as well, as another option?
If we need it. I don't think we're going to need that if things progress. I think there'll be a lot more going on over the summer when we don't have people here.
Understood.
But we will make sure that teachers have availability of parking. We must. They have to have a place to park.
Do you have anything else?
I think that's about it. The technology building, you mentioned the Rain Avenue projects, the HVAC upgrade, and the electrical system upgrade goes along with that. Will be probably sent up to the state sometime this summer, planning on for starting next summer.
So you had some of our guys, our crew was doing drainage at Center Avenue.
Yes, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, that was an old trench drain down there that had broken. We tried everything we could to fix it, but we ended up having to replace it. So I had our guys go and take care of that.
That's terrific.
We also at the same time upgraded the old copper phone lines. Verizon came in and upgraded everything to fiber optics, so we're running 100% on fiber optic. The old copper phone lines, they're phasing out, they're not used anymore. We are now 100% up to fiber optic in our district.
That's excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
You do. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
We have 8 minutes left. Bay Park. The effluent project at Bay Park?
Okay, so this is really just a point of information for the board. We had discussed, and I did put this briefly in the update, I believe. As you know, we received an offer of $88,000 from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation as just compensation for the market value of the project of the Western Bays Resiliency Initiative, where they were not going to be actually doing construction on our property, but underneath our property. And then we, in order to evaluate whether that was adequate or not, we contacted our attorneys. They advised us to contact an attorney that was recommended to us who does this kind of work. It was Herman Katz, Kenjemi, Wilkes, and Klein, because they have experience in evaluating this. I did speak to Kevin Klein, not the actor, but the partner who does this kind of work, and he was very helpful, very knowledgeable, and felt that initially we were going to go ahead and retain him, but we spoke with the board last month because they work on a contingency fee. So whatever more above the $88,000 they would recoup, he would take a portion of that according to the contract. However, in speaking with him and getting to the nitty-gritty, it would be necessary for him to hire an engineer and an appraiser to make a determination, and that would have probably been an outlay for us of about up to $15,000. And after discussing it with him, he felt that he didn't really see if there was enough justification as to why the value would be greater than what they offered us. and in speaking with Mrs. Rio, to take $15,000 of the district's money, and that it was really a gamble, because we would be expending those monies with absolutely no guarantee of getting anything back. So we do have 3 years. We did sign off because that was a deadline for us to send it back to the Conservation Department of New York State. We did indicate that we would take it, but we reserved the right to go to court down the road. We have 3 years during which time to do that. We don't have to, but we do have a 3-year window to do so. So if something were to change and some new information becomes available, we can certainly do it at that time. And then if it made sense to do so. And of course, if there were ever any disruption to the field or anything to our space, anything happened, if there was sinkage, like what's happened now at Bay Park, where the field would buckle or something like that, we would, that would be a separate lawsuit that we would have to bring against them. And that would be a tort lawsuit, and we would, we would have to contract with an attorney for that. It would be separate and apart from this. It would have nothing to do with this. So we will be getting those funds, the $88,000, which.
And I am, as I have said, I'm working with Pune, our attorney, to work up to determine what kind of reserve we can utilize. It's possible we have to start a reserve, repair reserve, which is something we don't have, or capital reserve. We don't have the ability to fund the capital reserve. We've already exceeded that, so we may have to start a reserve, put that money in just in case of a potential problem down the road, which is something we discussed, and I am working on that with them.
That's terrific. Thank you, Jeff.
So we're all good. I don't really have anything. I did put this item on just if there were any changes, but after speaking with Mr. Barr, I had sent home in the board update on Friday, his plan that he has developed thus far. I don't know, it's worth reiterating. Basically, he has worked very, very hard. I have to thank him. I've never seen him rattled, but when he got that call from Bay Park, he came down to my office very upset. It was really unfair of them to give us such short notice to close the field, and I understand it needs to be repaired, but to tell us on a Monday that it's closing on Friday, so he's put a lot of things in place. He's still waiting for a few things to happen, and he said by Friday we'll have a final plan, which I will share with you in the update, but he's doing everything that we can to ensure that our athletes continue with the seasons that we have to go.
So while this is closed, I know that it's not our field, would it be, like, could we petition Nassau County to move that fence behind the end zone? Right now it's 4 yards, so we can't play there. If it moves 1 yard, then we play high school sports. So it's like, we don't have a JV field, we don't have a junior high field. Would it be advantageous for the school to maybe petition Nassau and say, hey, while you're doing this, can you move this fence?
I think that's
We have limited fields as it is. I know we're doing our own, but we may not have a field for 4 weeks in the beginning of the season. We don't have a JV field. We don't have a junior high field.
That's a terrific idea, Joe.
Yeah.
So you know what Joe's talking about. What happens is that you need so much distance between the end line, okay, and the fence line. It wasn't when they created the field down there wasn't that distance, and I believe it was 5 feet, if I'm not mistaken, but if that distance is not there, you can't play.
This is
It's 5 yards.
that they're going to be repairing.
Right.
It's 5 yards.
It's 5 yards, it's 15 feet. So right now it's at, I want to say 12 feet, so 4 yards.
What Joe is saying is that since they're gonna be working on it, maybe they can do something with the fence line, and that's the fence line that's on the south end of the field, okay?
Because if that was 1 yard further back, we could have put it all in this year, right?
It doesn't hurt to.
I mean, that's the question. Again, it's not our field, so I don't know if it's worth, no.
Yeah, but it could be advantageous to them as well, by removing that fence, right? And people could come there and do whatever they wish to do, so.
Yeah, it's just
It's a win-win.
another site for us.
Okay. I will follow up with Mr. Barth. We'll go take a look, take some pictures, and write a letter to them. And everybody else that we know that can help us.
Yeah.
Because Mr. Clavin was here the other day giving an award to one of our students, and he was very supportive verbally to help us however he could. I mean, it's a county park, but he's the town of Hempstead, but obviously they all talk
Absolutely.
work together, and Mr. Diaz-Pazito as well, Councilman Diaz-Pazito, so that he would help us. I did reach out to our legislator from the county, and I never heard back, Ford, because she covers the Park by Bay Park. I forgot her first name, Mrs. Ford. And I did leave a message, and I did not get a call back.
It's just a shame to have a field in our town that we really can't use, you know?
Yeah, absolutely, thank you. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, just moving that. Tremendous.
One
It's
yard.
all by the way.
Italian language program?
I'm going to turn this over to Mona to talk about this.
Yeah, so this is a topic that we've been keeping a very close eye on for the last number of years. To frame it, we have two languages that we offer for our students in grades 7 to 12, Spanish and Italian. And students need to have one credit of language, which they complete after 8th grade, after 2 years, 7th and 8th grade, and then they are encouraged to continue through the language 3 years at least, and then we offer a 4th year and AP in both Spanish and Italian for seniors. So we've been looking at our Italian numbers for a number of years because they've been pretty low. Those of us in education know what we call a singleton, and that's a course that's offered only once during the school day. And Italian has been many years over a singleton for multiple years. It's not just, for example, elective that's offered one period, but it's a singleton each year for students who start in 7th grade and then move up through the grades. And so as the students choose Italian or Spanish in 7th grade, we expect that they complete obviously the first 2 years. We hope that they continue on, and most of our students do, but there is natural attrition. So when we're looking at classes that start in the teens or even lower in 7th grade over years, we see that drop off for other choices. And Italian, for example, over the last 4 years, by the time students got to AP, we're in the single digits. We're at 4 or 5 students each year, which we never want to pull an AP course from a student who's been in a class for 4, 5, 6 years, but we also have a hard time when we're looking at numbers like that and running courses. In addition to that, we keep an eye on our staffing and ensuring that we can staff and have the faculty to teach these classes. And when we're looking at Italian, we talk to the high school team, they've been making the recommendation that we should look very closely at our course offerings as we move forward, because we're not sure moving forward that we're going to have the faculty to teach the course, and more importantly, the enrollment to really sustain it over the years. So for example, going into next year, we've completed our course selection process, and we're in the low teens, about 14 students right now. About 14 students right now electing to start Italian. So as I mentioned, moving forward, that's a tough number to sustain. It's a tough number to schedule, and then it's a tough number to sustain. Going to this year, we were at a similar number, and because of course scheduling, we were able to offer students who had initially chosen Spanish to take Italian and get the numbers up a little bit. But we, like I said, for those multiple factors, we're concerned about the sustainability of Italian over the next number of years.
Is there any other languages? Oh, I'm sorry, John. Is there any other languages, or is it only Spanish and Italian?
Right now, it's only Spanish and Italian. We have been surveying other districts, and those are the two most popular languages that other districts offer. Some offer French in addition or instead of Italian. That's still an option. Some districts have added Mandarin and are continuing. That seems to be something that's growing. It's still not a very popular language among many districts, but it's growing in popularity. And then there are some other rare options, such as Hebrew in some districts, and intro to Japanese I saw in one district, so there are other things. And the thing that's come up here, and that we would like to look at down the road, is American Sign Language. That's also something that may be challenging to staff, but there has been interest, among students who want to go to education and things like that. So,
What was the last one you said? No, I'm sorry.
American Sign Language.
Sign
Sign language.
Yeah, that's a
It's
very, I think
actually
that's
really considered an official language.
I think it's great language to learn in this district.
That's one of the things I think that COVID has served to prove that we can be different educators, meaning that virtual education and a course like that, when you don't have that one staff member here, right? You're going to start it out. You can start it out that way. I think that that's where we should start looking down the road. The other thing I was going to mention is on the Italian, have we brought it down to the 6th grade, 5th grade, where we're starting to infuse that program like we have done with other programs through the years?
We haven't started instruction, but we've started the exposure prior to students making the choice, the course selection. So they're introduced to both Spanish and Italian by the teachers, and then they make their choice. But we don't instruct them.
Is that an opportunity that we might have, especially if the numbers are running low here, to infuse a little growth, you know, in 5th, 6th grade, because that teacher is here, and you can utilize that to grow for the future possibility. There's something to look at, you know, not to be answered now, but I think that's the only way. You know, you always think about recruiting. You know, how do you recruit? You know, so you start younger and you start bringing them up. Just an idea.
Yeah. Staffing would, however, if we maintained Italian, but kids were not selecting it, and we brought that language down, or option of languages down to the elementary school, there would be an increase in staffing. Because we would, if kids, you know, we allow them to self-select. And so do we continue Italian with, you know, a particular staffing situation this year? We've had such a hard time finding a replacement there, as we would, I'm sure, if we taught Mandarin, if we taught Japanese, if we taught American Sign Language. It's very difficult. French, some districts have continued French, but not as popular. A lot of districts have done away with it because it's just really hard to find teachers. So it's not only the interest, but it's staffing. So if we continued to commit to those smaller students and brought it down, we would still have to increase the Spanish staffing. And that would be something if the board wanted us to look at, you know, for next year, is to have an elementary language program. I know there's a lot of research on benefits and of that. And so a lot of different ways. In my previous district, we did teach Spanish in the elementary school. It was a very interesting model because it was in Merrick, and the kids came together in Merrick, North Merrick and North Belmore, and then they all came into the middle school, and 2 of the districts offered an elementary language program, and 2 did not. And so there was a lot of good data to look at. I'm not going to share benefits, but there was a lot of good data to determine the effectiveness of, you know, when you offer a language 1 time a week, what is the acquisition of those skills? And in order for kids to really acquire it, you have to offer it more than once a week.
The younger the better, right? And you retain it much better.
And more frequently. Once a week is not really enough to learn a language and then maintain the skills developmentally.
But again, go back to the staffing for a minute, and again, the virtual in the elementary, okay, wouldn't cost you more staffing, because we did that a couple of days a week again, just to recruit, just to see how they're liking it. And then you have your teacher up here like normal.
And we having them sign into an existing class.
Virtual class, and they'll sign in, you know, the teacher is there in their room anyway, you know, now they're taking class. So it's an idea. That's something I think that it might be interesting to look as a positive that came out of COVID, you know, virtual education.
We actually at one point had one of the only leads we had for an Italian teacher was someone who had a friend who lived in Italy, who might have been interested to teach our class remotely, but we would not have been able to pay her because we would have had to hire her with a visa. But that's how far we went in trying to find an Italian teacher, is to actually teach it remotely from Italy. So I give the high school credit for their creativity.
Okay, moving on to policy subcommittee.
Just copies of the policy, because Mary did not send them home. So just so you know what policies we're talking about, what policies Krista will be talking about.
Thanks, Pete.
Okay, so we have 2 policies that we are going to be putting up for adoption next week. The first one is 0101, gender neutral single occupancy bathrooms. This policy addresses Chapter 353 of the laws of 2020, which requires school districts and BOCES boards to develop policies and procedures requiring that all single occupancy bathrooms in public schools and BOCES be designated as gender neutral with appropriate signage on or near the entry door. This law became effective March 23rd, 2021. This is a required policy. And I think we have two here at the high school, down by the small gym, the nurse's office at Rain, the nurse's office at the center. Am I missing any?
We don't know offhand, but we do already have them designated as gender neutral bathrooms, and we will, when the construction is done in the tech buildings, those bathrooms will also be gender neutral single occupancy bathrooms. So we're already in compliance with the law.
Right.
The policy is now required. It's a required policy that we have to adopt.
This is also something that's great that's coming along as we keep unpacking our equity, policy and seeing how many areas it affects. This is one of those areas. So that's terrific work on that.
Any questions on that?
No.
And the second one that will be up for adoption is policy 5151, homeless children. This really was just reviewed and updated to for regulation changes as well as language changes. And just a little bit about this. The language clarifies the participation of homeless students in summer school programs, and the community mentor requires that districts ensure homeless children eligible for community mentor services do not face barriers accessing academic and extracurricular activities, including summer school. So again, a lot of this has to do with language and just updating regulations, and this also is a required policy.
Chris, I was anywhere in policy, because I didn't get a chance to read the whole thing now that I spoke about it. If a child was to relocate in the summertime, say if the parents were divorced and the child would live with another parent, would that come under the key event of what you just spoke about? I don't think so.
No.
So that comes into a custodial issue, and depending upon who the custodial parent is, that's where the child would need to go. And in a case of shared custody, then the parents get to make the choice.
Thank you.
But it's supposed to be, the child must attend the school where they lay their head, that's kind of the language. But there are, real split custody agreements where kids go 2 nights, sleep 2 nights in another house, and then in that case, the parents can make the choice of which district they want to go to.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the work, and any questions on that last policy? I'm sorry to say yes.
No.
Get a chance to close that out. Okay, so.
And, if I could just add one little thing in, today, the administrators met and we began looking at the regulations of the equity policy. In New York, I'll send it home just for your information. New York just published a document on developing approaches to equity, inclusivity, and diversity in schools, the New York State Education Department. So that was shared. I didn't even get a chance to open it, but it just came out today.
Yeah, I'd like to see it. I'd like to thumb through that as well, just to see if it aligns with what we have pretty much come up with as a team, and, just to see if it really is in alignment or not. Is there, so you haven't seen it yet?
It just came today. I didn't even get a chance to
Oh,
open
really?
the document, but I'll send it home. And I'm sure it mirrors a lot of what's in the policy, but again, it will help to, like when we had the conversation today with the administration, we reviewed the board's work of the first couple of pages of the policy and then looked at NISBA's sample regulation.
Yes.
As you know, we're very involved, but the administrators really like the policy. A lot of what's in the regulation they felt was important to stay there. So of course, we have another meeting scheduled to do, we did 2 sections, there's 4, we did 2 out of the 4, and I'll bring it back to the policy subcommittee and then back to the whole board. As I said, I would really like the board to finish with the policy and adopt it by June, so that next year we can
Absolutely.
actually start to work. not that we can't start the work now,
Yeah.
but the whole, going through the policy and the goals and the vision for it and the kind of core beliefs. And then it really is the work, is how do we operationalize that in our schools? What does that work look like? The professional development, how do we make sense of that? How do we bring that to life? Because the words on the page. And so this document, I think, would be very helpful in helping us to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's almost paying off that we had a vision of the policy, we put that down, and now we waited purposely to bring it through with the administrators and the staff and the faculty, so, and the community, so that we get more buy-in, and as we see, we're getting stuff now from the state, which is great, so.
And if I could thank the board again for really the courage, we talked about this the other day, Pete and Kristen and I, a lot of districts have not engaged in this work, a lot of boards have not taken this on. So kudos to you for
It's important to get ahead of it.
great, thank you.
Okay, right now, we're gonna go into our budget work session at 7 p.m., so we're gonna end this work session at 7:15 p.m. Thank you very much.
We'll put the projector on. I'm so used to John.
The remote is there to give it
Is
to
this?
I'll do it. I'll try. I don't always have good luck.
I mean, John always seemed to get it on the first try. It was amazing me. Yeah. It is. I can see it.
Yes, you like them. There you go.
There we go. Oh, perfect.
Good?
All right, well, good evening, and welcome to the fourth budget work session. As you can see, these are going to be the topics. We've been going through the expenditures for the last three sessions, so I'm going to give you the total current proposed budget, where we stand, our district initiatives that are inside the budget as we are right now. I'll present the three-plot budget, which is something the state likes us to share. We'll go over a little bit of the revenue. We'll talk about the state budget, federal stimulus grants, which Ms. Maurice has pretty much gone through, but we'll just briefly go through that again. And the universal pre-K that everybody has heard about. So, right now, the budget stands at $41,764,646, which is a decrease of $547,220 from the current school year. That's a 1.33% budget increase. That is an extremely tight budget. This budget maintains the current level of all instructional programs, extracurricular activities, professional development, and as I said earlier, you're going to see that it even includes enhancements to stay in line with our strategic planning. So when we built this budget for the last several months, we've been working diligently since November on this, always with the mindset that we may lose a mid-year. We went into the budget last year, we adopted last year with the threat of mid-year cuts. We operated last year, we froze money, we froze the budget, we saved money in anticipation of a mid-year cut, because the last thing we wanted to do was cut a program. Many districts were not as lucky as we were, and had to go ahead and cut program. We were able to maintain our program for the 21-22 school year, and we were able to maintain some funds just in case the state did go ahead and cut our funding. However, we started the budget thinking we were going to have a reduction in state aid, and when the governor's proposal came out in January, it in fact showed a reduction in state aid. So we maintained our process of being as tight as possible, making sure we could keep our current program, in hope that we could enhance it a little, depending on what happened with the state aid. And as we all know, the state aid turned out to be a little better than we ever anticipated. So the budget is divided into 3 different categories: administrative, capital, and program. And so it's important that you see the 3 portions, and I'm going to go through them so that you understand what each portion is. Administrative is not just the administrators. It's kind of misleading. It includes our Board of Education, our central office, our building administrators, our entire clerical staff is in here. Our liability, our student, and our flood insurance is all in here. Auditing fees, legal fees, and our district clerk is all here. There's a significant amount of support services that is considered administrative portion of the budget. This portion of the budget is only going up $30,000, just under $31,000 this year. So it's very tight. We looked at each individual line, and we cut where we could. We changed programs, or we changed efficiencies where we could to make sure we could keep this budget as tight as possible. The next portion of our budget is the program. This is the most important part of any school budget. This is our instructional portion of the budget. It has all of our instructional staff in it, our social workers, our health services, all of the instructional materials, transportation, athletics, extracurricular activities, anything that's directly related to instruction. And this is really the area of budget should be primarily focused. And just under 75%. But my goal for years is still just a little under it, but you'll see out of a $547,000 increase, $503,000 is all in the instruction, in the program, which is your instructional. That is where you want your increase to be. And then we have the capital portion. This is where our security is, our custodial and maintenance staff, all of our operations and maintenance of our buildings, all of our debt service, and any capital projects. Then this went up very, very slight amount. Again, we cut where we could, we trimmed where we could. Sometimes changing of staff allows us to save some money. So we only went up $12,000 in this area. But those are the 3 parts of the budget, how they break out and how the district has chosen to allocate any increased expenditures. And these are the district initiatives that are inside that budget with such a small increase. We have included an additional E&L teacher. At the moment, it looks like we may need some additional support staff for the number of students that are currently E&L. We will know more after our testing is done, but at this moment, we have 0.6 teacher included. We have an additional math teacher, 0.4. Again, we need more math classes, more math services here in the high school, and so we've added the additional staffing. We have 1 extra slot, or 1 slot, this is our first time, for the Long Island School for the Arts. It's a BOE program. It's for a very skilled arts program, or arts student. And
Visual and performing arts.
So a very high level student. And we're thrilled to be able to allow one of our students to attend this. And this has been a goal of the district for many years, is to allow some more of our students to get involved in the athletic programs and BOCES. We currently have 20 slots, which is something that several years ago we didn't even offer here in East Rockaway. So we're very proud of that, and now we've added a slot for our talented students.
So, in the past, we have had students who've been more interested in the performing arts rather than the visual arts, because our visual arts department is so strong. And we do offer now, we have art society, honor society, we have AP art now, and our art teachers, as you know, are so skilled. So we've been able to provide, and it's really when we can't provide the type of program for a particular student who has an extraordinary talent or interest in something that's offered at it's called the Lisa School. So it's a very selective process, and someone has to really demonstrate not only a strong ability, because they do have to audition, but also a very strong interest and commitment, because it's like the BOCES opt-in. It's a half a day at BOCES and a half a day here, and so they have to maintain very rigorous commitment to both programs.
This is incredible, by the way. The more of this, the better. There's a ton of talented students in this district.
Very talented students. So one slot sounds like not a lot, but honestly, to have a student with this talent level is really something.
Do the
very
kids-
proud of.
Do the kids apply and
Yeah.
BOCES kids?
The application goes through guidance. And we apply for a guidance department.
Does select.
BOCES does the selection.
They do the selection, yes.
Correct.
And they base it on, they have to be, they have to be solid students academically as well, in order to make this, as well as the BOCES CTE programs. Students also have to have a strong behavioral record, be well-behaved students, and also have good attendance. They have to be a strong student all around. They don't have to have a 95 average, but they have to be able to maintain 2 rigorous programs. Because they go there a half a day, and then they're transported back and spend the other half a day.
So as Ms. Rees just mentioned, we have an incredibly strong art program here in East Rockaway School District. And we have begun purchasing Mac computers to allow them to improve their art program. And we're going to continue that. This will be our second year. We had initially postponed the purchase of the computers for this year. They were in the budget. I held off because we really had fear of losing the year state cuts. Fortunately for us, that's not going to happen, so we will go ahead and purchase the ones that we have slotted for this year. And so this is really going to be the second year, and it's going to be a tremendous improvement to the high school art program. I believe they have 1 or 2 now that they're using.
They have a couple.
Just a couple of all students. So now, by next year, with the purchase of these, we should have 15 of them.
It also supports the photography department, the photography courses, as well as the general art classes.
And so this is,
Question,
yeah, sure.
do we know our collegiate bound students are on Mac? Is that something that we're hearing?
We have, our kids all get Chromebooks. So, except in the art department, there are certain programs that are, I guess, function better and have better opportunities, a better use in a Mac environment.
Some are
So-
design friendly versus,
Right.
like you're saying, collegiate friendly or better for writing and language. And
Yeah.
things of that nature.
But we don't have, Macs are very, very expensive.
Yeah.
A MacBook Air or a MacBook Pro, they're 3 times at least the cost of a Chromebook.
So the art department now does not have access to Macs?
What
We have 2
department?
or 3.
Yeah.
The art department has, I think they have 3 Mac laptops. We did have a Mac lab, but the Mac lab is reached its expiration, it's reached its lifespan, and though they're still usable, we can't get parts for it anymore, and so it's really kind of left to attrition. But
That's why we're looking at laptops, because the laptops are more they're more flexible for them to switch back and forth in the different classes rather than having workstations.
So do they take them home and do any of these Chromebooks and MacBooks disappear?
No, the Chromebooks go home every day with the students, grades 4 through 12. Well, now a lot of the kids have Chromebooks because of the remote and hybrid environment, but starting next year, we will have every child in the district will have in grade 3 through 12, we'll have a Chromebook that they take home every day. It's like a book. But these do not go home. The Mac computers don't go home unless there was a special reason to, and then the child would sign it out. But no, parents sign a user agreement and they are responsible for it if it gets lost or stolen. And we've not had any really like that. We've had some damage, but we've not really had anybody disappear.
Bring it back.
I don't remember. When computers is plural, so how many are we talking here? Do we have an idea? 15 minutes?
That's what you said.
Yes,
15? Okay.
between what we just purchased,
Mhm.
that was in the budget this year, and what we're purchasing next year, we're gonna have 15. And our goal is to have 20, and have a class set. And we are a little bit ahead of where we had hoped to be, you know, but, yeah. This is, something that our program has wanted for many years. It just was not, we just were not able to roll it out. And so we are really excited, as is our program.
They were using the Macs, but they were sharing them.
Yeah.
They had some, the teachers had their own that they would allow the students to use. And so it was a shared environment where now it's grown the interest. And of course, our art program has grown so much over the last few years. More and more students want to take advanced art classes because kids are so successful in them and so interested in them that, you know, obviously now there's a much greater need. But it's not like we were not providing it at all, just not as rich an opportunity for all students to access it at the same time.
So, we're going to, budget has a camera system and subscription that's gonna allow all regular season home games to be streamed and watched for free, by our, parents. I'm extremely excited. We were able to get it as a trial this year, and now we will continue to offer this to our students and our families. Additionally, we have a new large bus in this, budget. We only have one large 66 passenger vehicle. It's a 2002, so it's 19 years old. It has just under 100,000 miles on it. It runs reasonably well for its age, because Mr. Lars takes care of it like it's his baby. However, my biggest fear is always, if it breaks down, what will we do when we only have one large vehicle? And we really don't have that many drivers to start throwing them into multiple, smaller vehicles. So we will be purchasing a new large bus, and the other bus will be still utilized, and it'll be a good backup bus. We will then take our other van, our older van, which is a 2001, and we will surplus that van.
Mrs. Frio, did we look, I know when we bought the other bus, we had looked into an electric model.
It was not recommended for the buses. Now, with the driver's education vehicle, another vehicle that we feel is time to be replaced. This is a 2013. It has frequent repairs. The technology, the features that the more recent cars that all been required for 2018, this car does not have. So the children are not learning the use of the lane clutches, they're not learning how to handle a rear view camera. So it's time to upgrade it. It is costing us money. We have gotten a few quotes of just gas vehicles. We are working on hybrid plus to see if we can get that inside the budget. At the moment, the budget is set up for a gas vehicle, but we are definitely looking into potential of a hybrid. So it's quite a few upgrades, enhancements in this budget, And again, remember, we're only going up 1.33%, a little over $500,000. If you look at some of these items, you can see that we have taken putting a lot of work into really making sure that the budget is tight. Deductions can be taken where it's possible. I mean, enhancements and reductions doesn't mean cut in services. It means that we look at things and we try to find more efficient ways. And that's what we've been doing over the past year. Let's talk a little bit about the revenue. There are many sources of revenue that fund the budget. You know, unlike many other municipalities, the school district cannot run in the red. We must stay positive. We cannot spend more than we bring in. So these are the several funds that we use. This is kind of a breakdown of the various funding. State aid, I'll go through later. Charges for services, those are really tuition based students. We do offer some special programs here that students from other districts come and they pay us. The other districts will pay us to send their students here to some of our special ed programs. You'll see that went down a lot. And the reason for that is unfortunate closing of St. Raymond's. The students from other school districts that went to St. Raymond's, we were billing them for health services and any kind of related services that we pushed in. And it was a significant amount of money that we were able to collect. And it wasn't like we were ripping off other school districts. There's a standard form and a standard method for determining the billing. We all follow the same method, but it was a significant loss of revenue. However, there is some savings on the expenditure side. The nurse that we hired and we had working in St. Raymond's, that nurse was employed by East Rockaway School District. You know, so we had one nurse resign, so it kind of just worked out on us. So we don't have that expense. We do have increased expenses because we have transportation now. So there's a lot of back and forth, but you will see there was a significant loss in revenue. Interest, pilot loans slightly, but that's a number that's given to me. We have no control over it. Those are monies that are taken off the tax rolls and we get directly. Interest, I kept it flat. Interest has been all over the place right now. The rates are very low. If the economy should improve, it would be great if we can increase that. We were increasing it, but it can't get down.
The pilot is given to you by the county IDA?
Yes, and by, we get it directly from MICA. So we get a couple of different sources to give it to us.
How much forecasting time do they give you for this? And is it, do you know, like, what has the trends been over the last couple of years? Is it a revenue stream that will increase or will it decrease?
It's gone up slightly. They do give me multiple years out. We don't see anything rolling off in the next several years. Our biggest change is always the LICA piece. That is, and even when you talk to them, you know, one year it's, you know, at this level, the next year we see a spike, the following year we see it drop drastically. What we've been doing for that piece is we've been using an average over the last 2 years to try to keep it, you know, without it going up and down. We do not see anything falling off for at least another 4 years.
That's when because the IDA has on the safeguard that's down the block, there's a 15-year program. There are 5 free step-ups, if I remember correctly. And we are in the first 18 months of that. Is that fair?
It's about right, maybe,
right?
Yeah.
And then so we'll anticipate one step up on that tax roll in 3 years, another step up at 8, and then that comes off.
Comes off.
completely.
But then they go back on our tax.
They go back on the levy, correct? Okay.
Yeah. So it does kind of, you know, and sometimes going back on the levy is better for us because we're collecting more.
Assuming that we don't need that increased revenue each year, that wouldn't have been if they went through the IDA. Does that make sense? If they didn't go through the IDA and they were still stuck in the tax levy, that commercial properties and taxes increase could have been larger. Could have, I mean, it's all subjective.
Yeah,
Yeah,
could have been more. I
right,
mean,
could have been more.
yeah, often
Could
when
have
it
been
comes
developed,
down,
might not have been developed too, so I mean, there's a whole bunch of questions.
it gets to development, you know, by offering to bring them in. But often when they come back on the tax rolls, it benefits the school
Yeah.
district. But in order to get them here in the first place, we need to
You gotta
have
offer
them
them.
on higher. So it's kind of a, but again, like you said,
Yeah.
I don't see any drop off in the next several years.
And are you seeing any income revenue from the new, Davison ship, what is it called?
Yes.
Yes.
They got nailed with that.
They got very much, we got a lot of phone calls from the residents there, which is not, you know, we don't set their tax levy. It did bring our assessed value up. It did bring, it had a significant, the next slide is the, tax cap. It had a significant impact on the tax levy cap because the growth factor, because the growth factor is based on how much brick and mortar and value you add to the district, and that made a major difference for us for this year, which allowed us to bring our tax cap up. And you'll say we did. I know you cheated, I watched you, but we did not bring it up as high as we could, but that was definitely an impact. I do know a lot of people were very unhappy with their taxes.
Bad job by that company then, honestly, right?
They're fixing it, so it'll be spread back out on the state's.
So the miscellaneous is, just a combination like driver's ed collections, facility usage fees, that we collect, lost books, things like that. It's pretty much right back the same now, each year. We are not using reserves this year because, as I spoke about many times, last year we froze expenditures and the money we did not spend, we kept as fund balance in anticipation of potential state aid cut mid-year. We did not have that state aid cut mid-year, so we are getting back the money here. We will have more money to get back because we started out with more. So I'm not using reserves. I don't like to use reserves unless you have to use reserves, like pulling money out of your savings account, making a car loan. In this case, we don't need to do that. So we will be using more appropriate fund balance to keep the levy down.
Jackie, do you have the before you get to the tax levy, is there, you know, the year over year before the tax levy, if there's an increase, I do the math to figure it out, but like, you don't have it where it's state aid, charges, pilot interest, miscellaneous transfer, fund balance, that total, and then the impact to the taxpayers, right? That's the tax levy?
That's the tax levy. I don't, but I have it in my
But
office.
it's basically 41 minus basically 10 million,
Mhm.
right? Like,
Yeah. A little
So,
nine.
the only, even though we're up 1.3%, all the impact is on taxpayers.
No. Not all of it, because some of it
90% of
comes
it?
from the state gave us more money, there's an increase in state aid. But
Right?
not all of it is on taxpayers.
Well, you have a $533,000 increase, and the tax levy is increasing $500,000 there, right?
Mhm.
It's about a 1-to-1 ratio on that, in that scenario.
Yes, because you're right, because the state aid went up, but what went down was the money collected for charges and services.
Are we looking at a triage plan to increase that potential income, or is there anything that we can consider? Did we, maybe 165,000 annually we anticipated from St. Raymond's each year? Is that?
About 107. Yeah,
But doesn't the services drop? Because, you know, that was for, the nurse was one, so that's easy, but.
right, so
Like
we
the
reduced the
OT.
expenditures, we definitely reduced the expenditures, it wasn't a wash, there's maybe about a difference of $80,000. Because what I do now have to do is I now have to transport some of our students, that I did not have to transport, because the reaction within our boundaries, some of those students will go out of district. And I will need to transport them, so there'll be increased transportation costs, and now I will need to pay health services to other school districts for whatever schools they go to.
So you send kids to St. Raymond's for stuff?
We didn't send them to state rate, some people enrolled as students in the state rate.
Gotcha,
You know, they
from
don't-
outside of East Rockaway.
As well as East Rockaway students, when some East Rockaway students
Yeah.
chose to go. So now those students, St. Raymond's is closing, and those students may choose to go to another Catholic school. And so now that Catholic school is going to be outside the East Rockaway boundary. So we will now have to transport those students. We didn't transport them because there was no transportation to St. Raymond's for in-district students. And we also have to pay health services to the school district wherever their new district is located. So there are some increased costs as well. That make sense? Okay. So yes, the way this budget fell, most of it was on the taxpayers, and that's why we made sure we kept this levy as high as possible. I don't foresee a significant drop in services next year. I mean, these are things that were unusual.
So you're looking at 320-ish maybe next year, too, right, 325. One more question, I'm sorry, just curious. What's the way to drive that revenue? How can we think as a district to drive that charges? Is it offering American Sign Language to the greater community and having districts come in and say, hey, we love our kids to have American Sign Language here? Is that something that is creative, that you can create, sort of?
Well, what we've done over the last several years is we really, the way we it's hard because a lot of our aid is based on expenses. What we grow on expense driven aid, and we really focus a lot on expense driven aid. The state aid number, which we will get to later, you only see like $159,000 in the budget, but it really went up. Foundation aid went up by about $300,000, but our expenditure aid is going down because we spent less money. So that will go back up. And what we've done is we've shifted a lot of our expenses, instead of just buying them from vendors, we've been buying a lot of stuff from BOCES because we get BOCES aid back the following year. And that has been a way to drive more revenue into the district.
We're not, even with our special education programs, the goal is really to provide service, not to make money. So we're not really allowed, I don't know if allowed is the right word, but that's really not kind of the mission of the school district, is to bring in programs that then we could charge other districts for. That gets a little sticky.
Yeah, like,
So
like
we do have other districts, we have a number of students that come
You
from
have to be
Valley
reactive.
Stream.
It's reactive. You can't go actively, proactively
No.
solicit. You have
Right.
to have somebody has to approach.
we're not
I
really
mean,
giving money.
when we have a vacancy in a special education program, the special ed directors in the area might say, gee, I have an opening here, in case anybody's looking for a placement, and, we do have a great program, and it's gotten a great reputation. We do have a number of students who are sent from particular districts, and yes, that does generate some revenue, but we can't specifically run those programs in order to make a profit. We're not allowed to do that.
And you see, we offer the driver's ed. The driver's ed program is not a profit.
It's self-sustaining.
It's self-sustaining, and so that's what we do at school districts. Yes, we can use ways to get state aid, and you see a couple of, maybe two work sessions ago. You see that we purchased some things for the E-rate program, in which we could get E-rate money back, so we utilize the general aid fund, and then we're getting E-rate money, and we're getting, we get E-rate money back, and we get BOCES money back. So when we do purchases, we try to figure out a way in which we can get revenue back from one source to another. We don't really plan our program to make money, so to speak. When we take into account how we spend it, we look into account as well, can we buy it from here because we can get state aid back here? So those are the areas.
And we've done a lot over the last few years
Yeah.
in increasing the expense-driven aid by being very, very careful and thoughtful about where we can make those purchases through BOCES so that we do get that state aid back.
What is the
Increase
three
that
aspects?
tremendously.
Sorry. The three aspects? Is that the name?
So the reason I have it, I guess I don't have my comment. because it doesn't show. So the reason I have it up there is because when you look in the newspaper, it'll always show you a different number on the 2021. It'll show you in this particular case, it shows you a lower number because they just failed to add the piece of CARES funding that we got. It's happened to fall right out of that. So it looks like they gave us more money than they did not give us. We got it, and if you look at last year's funding, you can clearly see that we got the CARES funding, and it was considered normal state. Also, it's expense-driven aid. A lot of state aid is based on your expenses. So how many students who went to special ed? What were the services? How many students did we transport? What did it cost us? How much did we spend on BOCES? How much aid did we get back? How much aid did we get back on building aid? All of that is expense-driven, so it's an estimate, just like any budget. So that number, when I compare one year to the next, I always use, well, this is what we built the budget on. It doesn't matter, well, again, now. What matters is I'm moving forward. This is what we built the budget on, and how much more do I have or less than I have from the prior year. So I did put the asterisk in, and it must have fallen off the screen that said, based on adopted budget. Let's talk about tax levy cap. We went into it, in fact, 10 years ago. Can't believe it's been 10 years already. So again, the tax levy cap, complicated formula. There's 5 different variables in it. 4 of the variables are unique to each and every school district. 1 is the same across the entire state, and that's the CPO. And so everybody knows it is the 2% cap. 2% or CPI, whichever is low. CPI being the calendar year. For this year, 2020 CPI is 1.23. So that's the one variable that's the same across the entire state inside a formula of 5 different variables. So based on the formula, our tax levy cap for this upcoming school year is 2.6%, meaning we can go out to 2.6% levy to the residents and raise an extra $815,391 to support the budget without looking to pierce the cap. Well, you have to prove it, but without looking to pierce the cap. Now, so what I did is I gave you here an analysis of what does our tax levy cap look like for the past 10 years that this has been in place, to just demonstrate how difficult it is to do any kind of long-term planning. Because as you can see, it goes up and down. I mean, 1 year we're at, I think that was my first year, 0.27%. I mean, that is nothing. So it just goes, it's very hard to predict. But Governor Cuomo wanted a 2% limit on taxes, and over the 10 years since this has been in place, the average has been 2.05%. It's almost right there. But it is very difficult to budget with a variable like this. It goes up and down.
Basically inflation.
It's just a yes. Huh? Okay. So then we look at the tax levy increase. This is the amount of money that we are increasing the levy to the taxpayers. You can see we are presenting a proposal of 1.6%. That's a whole percent less than we are able to within the guidelines. Again, I gave you your 10-year history here in East Rockaway, and you'll see 2 of the last 3 years we have come in below the tax levy. So the district was very hard at making sure that we are not just taxing to tax, we're not just spending to spend. We do improve our program every single year. If you go back, all of the presentations are on the website for multiple years back, and you'll see there's always enhancements to the program. So when you see that we don't have to, we're not taxing to the top, because if it's not necessary and we feel we don't have to, we don't. So those 2 out of 3 years, I think that says a lot about the district. Our 10-year average is even better. We're at 1.93%, right under 2%. So I think that speaks volumes about the district's management of funds for the past 10 years. Let's talk a little bit about the New York State budget that came out last week. Again, you see the little asterisk there. This time I actually put the comment on the bottom. And so that's the number that I budgeted for. It's not the number you see in state aid runs, but it is the number that we used last year. It's the number we were given March 31st last year. And the number that they gave us this year was the $7.6 million, which is $159,000. Now, we got foundation aid of over $300,000, but because our expense-driven aid went down, we're only seeing $151,000. So this is like something, it's not simple. You know, it's a budget, just like you have at home. Nothing's cut and dry.
I'm
Yes.
gonna interrupt because I'm a pain in the ass.
right.
But, so, when we were working the budget 2 months ago, we had 7.3 million as the aid. I have an increase of aid, net aid, not just total aid, of $467,000 from what we were working with to what we're getting. So I'm not getting the number difference.
Well, I have to pull out the governor's proposal,
I have the NYSED.
and if I use, is that the governor's proposal or the legislature's proposal?
It's the New York State run.
And the governor's one is two different ones, it's the governor's and the legislative, this is the
This is the
adopted one.
legislators.
And is the adopted one, is the 7.61 accurate? No, because you probably have preschool in there. Preschool is not considered general operating aid, it's special ed aid, and it's inside of, again, state aid lines are very exceeded. You spend a lot of time pulling things out that don't belong there.
They have 140.
40,400, correct?
That's
That is not
that's our
operating aid.
kindergarten.
It does not go in this side of the budget, it's not part of it.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, so what they, and I'm gonna get to that later on in the problem with the proposals, or the state aid funds, is that they don't necessarily depict the actual picture. And it becomes very difficult for anybody to understand it. Again, like I said, they left the CARES Act funding that they gave us off of the run to compare this year. Which made it look like they gave us so much more money than they did. Another thing that they did is they added the pre-K funding in the operating, in the state aid number, that's federal funds, that does not support the general fund. So, and we were going down, if you recall, we were talking about a loss of like $200,000. And the difference is we actually got the foundation aid of 300, and that brought us up over. And that's the difference, the loss of 2 and the increase of 1, so that's where your foundation aid
That's
changed.
right. I'm just here to ask questions.
Here. So, we got, here's the foundation aid. So, this year, they've decided that they're going to fund us over 3 years. And you know, this is the 2007 formula. We have been not getting the amount of money we were entitled to. 2 years ago, when the economy was booming, Governor Cuomo had no money for us to give us a foundation aid. This now, in the midst of a pandemic, we're going to fund foundation aid. East Rockaway owed $1.2 million in foundation. They're giving us 0.265%. They have multiple calculations to determine who should get what. We're getting $329,341 in addition. So that's where our state aid number went from a decrease a couple of months ago to an increase of $159,000. And giving us that foundation aid money. They said that we will have 50% of it by the second year. That would be about another $300,000 for next year.
But they're never gonna catch up to what they didn't give you.
Oh, no, they're never gonna give us 1.2 for the last 7 years.
Yeah, no.
No. They're thrilled that they're actually gonna get us to the funding level and eventually that we should have been getting. We've lost millions, as many other districts have, we've lost millions of dollars. Getting it is nice. This is what they're telling us this year, they're promising us next year. Again, it's a 2007 formula, we never got the money, it's 2021, so I find it hard to believe that they're gonna just keep funding us. But if the economy does well, let's hope that it comes through, we'll see the other 300,000 to bring us to 50% next year. The other thing is the residential placement costs, we talked about this slightly. In the past, the state used to pay 18.4% towards placement, residential placement as the state's share. Last year, in the 2021 budget, their portion was shifted to the school districts for a 1-year period. The governor proposed that it would be permanent. They did not agree with that, but they did extend it for another year. It was budgeted for last year, so we had it in the budget, so them granting another year didn't really impact us. The other thing that they did was the transportation aid. Now, the governor had proposed that any transportation costs for delivering meals or delivering books or instructional materials would be aided as transportation aid. We did not use our vehicles to transport food or books or anything like that. But the legislators added that any kind of standby, there were some areas, some vendors in which we still were expected to pay the bill because we had contracts and agreements. So there was a little bit back and forth. Well, school was closed, but we had to keep the contracts going because he was closing 2 weeks at a time. And we couldn't cancel the contracts because we didn't know in 2 weeks if school would be opened up again and then we'd have no transportation for the children. So there was a back and forth. So the governor closes on March 16 permanently for the rest of the school year. So he has agreed, they have agreed to fund us for those short period of time for any transportation costs in which we paid vendors, even though they were not transferring our students. We did not do that. We did not pay vendors. It's something we just did not do.
Jackie, is this May 7th, because was that when he decided schools would not reopen for the rest of the year?
Yeah. He decided on May 7th, it's close to June 30th. So he was doing 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, starting as of March 16th, and then he said on May 7th, that's it, June 30th. So they tried to get it through June 30th, but at least we got to May 7th.
So we didn't pay the contractors, but we're getting the money from
No.
No. We won't get the money because we didn't lay up costs. But other districts, we go ahead and pay the contract.
That's what I was asking.
Does our vendors coming after us for the money, or are they saying?
One vendor we settled for, the other 2 vendors filed a claim, we haven't heard a thing from them. It's been almost a year now. So if they file a claim, then we may.
What does our council say about that not abiding by the contract?
Well, the problem was, the contract did allow us to cancel the contract. It allowed us, but we couldn't cancel the contract. The governor's executive order said that we needed to maintain services and we needed to maintain our students and any of our staff, which became a really difficult task because we didn't know if school was going to reopen.
I interrupt one thing. We're talking about transportation costs in a non-busing district.
Yes, we have children go to private.
So we're only talking about a very small piece of the actual transportation budget item too. Is that a fair? Yeah.
It's a decent amount of money on transportation. Because we do transport to quite a few private schools. But it's a small piece of the budget.
And our own special education.
And our own special education
And our
students.
in-house students.
But that's in
Our
district funding.
students to BOCE, CTE, and Lisa School for the Arts, all those seats are
It is,
transferred. And we also transport special education students who attend BOCE's programs and other district programs.
So all of it's about $800,000.
Part of it.
As a rough amount, for our contractual transportation costs. It was hard because we were under these guidelines. We were all afraid as to what would happen if school reopened and we canceled contracts. Like I said, there's one particular vendor who just didn't care, walked away. The other vendor we settled on for like half of what we were going to pay.
And that's not eligible for reimbursement.
Only up to for the one that we paid half, the half up to May 7th, when I finish calculating, we'll be eligible. Yeah, because we paid it. So, it is a calculation I'm still yet to do. And then the other thing that got approved was, the governor's proposal to give guarantee low-cost broadband for low-income families. Now, again, we'll be using, there's an E-rate program, that's a program that we use a lot to help offset some of our spending. The funding for the E-rate program has increased as well, And if we needed to increase our broadband, we could actually utilize those funds, and it's 100%. In the past, it's only been a certain percentage. We've used that, and then we've used BOCES to kind of get big expenses down low. For this particular expansion, it's 100% BOCES. So we will be looking into that program and that criteria. I'm not exactly sure what it is that we need, if we need anything, or if we need the criteria. Certainly. How come I can't get this to work?
Use the arrow.
Oh. So the federal stimulus funds. If you look at the state aid funds, down the bottom, there were $2 amounts. Under the bottom where it gave you the dollar amount, the total state aid, it also gave you CRRSA funding, and it gave you the ARPA funding. Two different stimulus grants. One approved in December, one approved in March. So the December one was $1 million for East Rockaway, and the March one was $766,000. So a significant amount of money outside of the operating budget.
And that's regulated how you spend it, right?
But yes, yes. And I will go into that if I figure out how to push my buttons here. So what do we know? We don't know a lot because we only just really got this information. But we know the funding is outside the general fund. It's federal fund or special aid fund, depends on how you want to look at it. People call it both things. You must develop a plan that meets the specific criteria. Ms. Lee spoke about that in depth a little while ago. We have to submit a grant application. The word on the street is that by July 1st, we will have to have a plan submitted, presented, and sent to the state for approval. The application and further detailed information is expected to be to us by April 30th, and we have multiple years to spend this money.
So that money's sitting there, not guaranteed, and you.
It's guaranteed. It's guaranteed. We just have
It's
to
not
apply
like,
that.
it's not a competitive grant. It's an allocation that we will get. We just have to apply for the money specifically. We have to outline how we're going to spend the money, and it has
Yes,
to
we
be.
could find the path.
And yet, we have to just make our plan meet their criteria, but it's guaranteed sitting there. So these are the criteria that we know. Ms. Louise spoke about a little bit earlier, 20% to address learning loss. And these are some of the programs that we can use. Again, we are going to have to do a real analysis when the application for the information comes out of the our presentations. Purchase of educational technology is another area that we can use these funds for. Mental health services, professional development, and of course improved ventilation, which is something we spoke about earlier too, and hope that we can use some of this funding to improve the ventilation as well.
And the funds must also focus on groups that have been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. So special education students, ENL students, and low-income students.
If there is something that comes out of that pathway to create for this, and we implement it, and it's funded through this grant, there is, if I heard correctly earlier, there is a point in time now in the future then where we might want to continue that, outcome in some capacity, but potentially not have the money for it if that's the case.
There's a funding cliff with
Right,
all of
it's
these.
like a sunset clause almost.
Yep.
Right? So, is there any thought process to when those ideas to define that grant, that application, or that's just so novice to you right now that it's tough to even see like where you land from a.
We've already started to discuss it with our principals, with our administrators, and Ms. Heck shared a few proposals that we have. We definitely will be offering some remedial services over the summer. We'd also like to offer some enrichment programs over the summer, and then really extend those into the fall as well. Again, a lot of some of this will include professional development. So up 20% at least has to be used for learning loss. but the funds also can be used for other purposes. And so we will file our plan, as it's required by the deadline, just as we do with our federal grants every year. We have to file a budget, and we have to describe how we're going, specifically down to what people we're hiring, how much we're going to pay them, supplies and materials, the costs of these programs. It all has to be outlined in the grant application.
Right, but once the grant application is applied for, funds are received, plans are implemented, everyone's loving this $1.8 million worth of new program.
Well, not all of it's going to be programs. Again, some of it, up to 20%, at least 20% will need to be programs. Some of it may be for ventilation, improvements in ventilation. Some of it will be for PPE. Some of it will be to purchase technology. Some of it could offset the cost of our mental health clinic that we participate in.
So there's,
So not all of it's going to go into programs. And of course, the idea of the programs will be to address learning loss, to address the impact of COVID. And so after COVID has hopefully gone away and our students can benefit from some of these programs to get them back up to speed, the board and the district will have to decide if they are really wonderful, worthwhile programs. Can we find a way to continue to fund them? Can we reallocate monies from some other programs that maybe are not as effective? But those decisions will have to be made at a later time, because it will be difficult to incorporate all of these. But again, not all of it's going to go to educational programs. So we're not talking putting $1.7 million or $1.8 million back into the budget at some point, because this will be spent again over 2 and 3 years, depending on which funding stream it comes from. So, yes, if there are some really wonderful, worthwhile programs that are an outgrowth of this, I imagine we would find ways to reallocate monies and keep those programs going. But that would be something we have to evaluate as we move forward.
It would just become one of our district initiatives, which we have every year, It's long-term planning, as we see things are
Even though it's hard.
successful.
Even though it's hard.
It's hard.
On
We
the,
managed to do it, it's
I know.
hard.
On the educational technology homefront connectivity piece bullet here, I see that and think of like providing Wi-Fi to our our community. Is that what we're talking about here?
I don't have all the specifics yet, because I think we just got this, we don't have all the
No,
items yet, but
I
we
can
do
answer
have portals.
I can answer that. It would not be for us to provide Wi-Fi for the greater community. We provide Wi-Fi hotspots as needed for students who do not have, and we are now, this is a mandate.
Yeah.
We're already doing that
Yeah,
since the beginning of the pandemic, and we will continue.
I was curious about how many or what percentage do we know that we have those hotspots out?
We have about 30 students who need those hotspots right now. There may be other ways to provide that. The internet, there are other options that have become available, so it may not be a hotspot, but it's not to provide internet services for the East Rockaway.
Right. But potentially for the student body.
For individual students who do not have access to the internet. Yeah.
And that potentially is only 11% district-wide based on remote learning numbers, right?
Well, we have full remote learning students, but all of our students now have devices, so it's not just, they don't just need the Wi-Fi because of remote learning. The Wi-Fi becomes a requirement for homework, for the discovery textbooks that we
And
have.
studying,
Kids go home and they
yeah.
use different programs as part of their instructional program for homework. So they need access to the internet through Google Classroom. So even if we have no remote learning, we would, moving forward, because the device has become an integral part of our instructional program, we would really want to provide internet for those students. They can't learn on a phone. They can't do Google Classroom, and homework is assigned through Google Classroom. So we would want to continue to provide those families with Wi-Fi access if they did not have it. And again, there would be criteria for that. These are families in need, who have an economic need.
So another grant we have is our preschool, our pre-K. It's $140,000, we spoke of briefly. Again, we have to apply for it, it's not part of the general fund. We are waiting for the guidance, and we know what it's based on. It's based on a certain number of students, but we're still trying to figure out whether it has to be a full-day program or a half-day program.
If I could say a few words. here.
Sure.
So this for me is something I'm so excited about because this funding, universal pre-kindergarten was made available many years ago. Back when I was in Levittown, so it was 1999 until, in the early 2000s. And the money was made available by the federal government through the state, and districts applied for it. Each district was given an allocation. It's tied to Title I and to need. This district had never applied for the funding when it was available. And when Patterson was governor, the funds were frozen. And any district who was not already in the pipeline of receiving those fundings was no longer able to apply. So every year we would call the state, since I've been here, and we ask if the funding stream is opening up. Is there an application for new districts who were never receiving the monies? And every year we're told no. So this is very exciting that these monies have been released and we now can have access to them. What does that mean for our community? We're not sure yet. There are different ways for us to use the funds. We could, of course, one of my goals here would have been really to open up a pre-kindergarten program. It's something that's really needed here. We do have many families whose children attend preschool, but we also have some that don't. And we know that preschool is so valuable for students now, for students to come into kindergarten with some prerequisite skills. So there are different ways that this works. We're not sure we can get the details yet. One of the ways is to open our own preschool program. Of course, we know we have some challenges with that. Space is a challenge. Could we possibly find a classroom? And we could. We're going to hope that's what I would like to do. There are obviously startup costs that may or may not be able to be included in the grant. So we really have to study this carefully, as it would be our first year of receiving them. What would be required of the district and what we would be able to expend the money, because this is allocated on a per pupil basis. That $140,000, I don't know what the individual student allocation is, but
5,400, so 26 children.
Okay, I heard that it's now going to be higher.
Yeah, well, that's what it is right now.
Yeah.
26, they allocated us 26 students at $5,400.
And one of my colleagues says that that's not correct, that it's $10,000 per student. So there's like some unanswered questions. We also, instead of running a program, and we could do this as well, it's another alternative, is we could partner with a community-based organization. So a local preschool in the community that already runs a program, and we could flow through our monies and hold a lottery, so students would go for free to an already established preschool, and then the funds would go to them. And many districts, some districts open their own preschools, and others use community-based organizations. So that's something we'll be looking at, but I think this is so exciting because it's something we've not had before. We hope that it will be sustained and it will be continued for future years, because that's another consideration. If we did start a preschool program in district, we would want to know that the money would be coming every year, because that would be something difficult for us from one year to the next to incorporate in the budget. Many districts do fund through a combination of federal and universal pre-kindergarten grant, and they also fund it from their own operating budget. So obviously it would be a long-term decision to see how we would go about doing this, but initially it would be really for need-based students who would be afforded the opportunity. People would apply and they would get to go either free. We initially would love to start out with a half-day program, so we would run one classroom, 2 half-day programs, but we just heard on a webinar today that it may only be for a full-day program, which means half the number of students. So there's a lot we don't know, we'll be hearing, but this is going to be a project for me. I think it's amazing that we finally are able to access these funds and our community will benefit. Our preschool students will benefit from it. So you'll hear more about it because that $5,400 has been the same for years, forever. And so, you know, it clearly probably could it support one teacher salary for 26 kids if it were 2 half-day programs as a full-day program, it would be difficult to run. You couldn't have 26 kids in one preschool program. Anyway, there's a lot of details. I know I don't want to get in the weeds, but it's something that's really great for us.
And it was a surprise. We were shocked to see this show up, you know.
You heard me screaming from.
Is it worth
Yeah.
it to match the state, like, from a startup cost perspective? Like, given that we're under the 2% tax cap, ready to say, if you're gonna give us 150,000, maybe we'll put 150,000 into this program. Survey, you guys talking a little earlier about surveying everyone. Why don't we find out what's going on if there's a need for, you know, real need for it from the community perspective.
Yeah.
too.
I think we're probably a little late into the game and the budget season to do that now. But I think we certainly can see what we can do, and providing this, we continue to receive these monies, it's obviously something we can build on.
Could you offer this to your teachers as a benefit too?
Excuse me?
Could you offer this as to
It
teachers?
would be for residents.
It's only for residents.
Well, that's another thing, is to open up a daycare center, but we don't have the room for that.
No, I know, I just, yeah, just.
Unfortunately, our schools are really crowded. You know, we don't have a lot of space.
I was just gonna say, we
Yes.
can rent St. Mary's.
No.
Move district administration out too.
So that concludes tonight's presentation. Next week we will just adopt. When we adopt the budget, we're not adopting the tax levy, we're adopting the actual budget number. On May 11th, we will have our budget hearing here. We will go through all of it all over again, expenditures straight through in a little bit more detail. Are there any questions that haven't been asked?
I have a question. How are you looking, like, do you look at your actual to budget or budget to budget?
When we build the budget, we're looking at actual. I have about 12 years of actual in spreadsheets that I check. Contractual codes that vary each year. I have about 7 years of each individual service that we purchased and what it's been for, and then if we don't use it anymore, why we don't use it anymore, what it was used by. So we do look at that. I would not be 100% honest if I said that I look at all 5,000 codes every year, because that would be impossible. I wouldn't be able to do any other work. But I do look at them overall across the year, and when I see significant variances is when we start to really drill down deeper and try to figure out, well, what is the variances and you know, why is there so much extra money in? Maybe we just don't need it. And then that's how we ended up at 1.33. It's because we just took a little from here. We did an analysis over several years. This is my 5th year here now. So you get a little bit better handle on things the more you hear. But yes, we do look at, and I have more spreadsheets.
So when there's, you budget an amount and then you spend it, what happens with the,
Reserve?
yeah?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
What, so you budget $500 and you spend $450, where does that $50?
So that would all end up in fund balance, and that's the amount of money, I said, we still appropriated fund balance, so if there's a balance left over, we give a certain amount back to offset the tax levy, so that the levy comes down.
And that's why you're not doing it this year.
This year, I'm not using reserves, I actually.
There's a very large increase.
We're actually
in fund balance.
increased.
We actually increased it because I had money left over, more money than normal last year.
Because of
Yes.
Because of COVID. And when I didn't give it back, because I was fearful that they would take state aid in a year, and then I wouldn't have the money, because you can't go into the red of the school district. I wouldn't have the money to fund the payroll or the programs, and then I had to do mid-year cuts to the program. So we opted to take a safe way, and we saved the money in appropriated fund balance to allocate in case we lost the revenue. We didn't lose the revenue. It's very good, so now we're going to give it back. Some of the money we do put in reserves, and that allows us to even out highs and lows, like in your retirement systems. We will offset money. We were funding capital reserves, and that's how we came up with $7.6 million to put towards the capital projects instead of doing the borrowing.
Question. How do we budget for the difference in actual? So she just said 500,000, we're gonna spend 450. But the point in time that we spent that 450 is after the budget's adopted, right? So the budget's adopted now. We come in 2022 and we actually spend the $450. How do you forecast the allocation side if you don't know what the actual expenses are in the future?
Well, it's just like any other budget, you're using your best
Okay.
educated guess. And it's based on, like I said, I have probably 10 or 12 years of spreadsheets that I have. I have each and every expenditure detailed. Budget code 1620 450 10 0025. Year 910. These are the vendors I spent this much money on. 10 11. Side by side. These are the vendors I spent.
But can I interrupt you for a minute? But about 80% of our budget is contractual salary. So that, am I right? It's about 75 to 80%. So
Contractual
that-
benefits.
that's a given that we spend we expend that.
We know what you're going to spend.
We know, we're obligated by contract.
We have a good idea. Sometimes it varies a little because the health insurance varies a little, but the TRS rate might vary a little, but.
I bring it up because it mentioned Jim earlier when we gave the update. The cost of lumber is 4 times today than it was when you guys draw the drawings for outside or wherever update. So we have clients that were budgeting projects for 2 years ago, spending $150,000 on lumber, and it's costing them $565,000 right now today. That's the actual cost of lumber. It's the same amount of lumber. So that's why I'm curious about how you have it budgeted, but obviously you have a lot of data.
Yeah,
A lot of data,
We have
yeah.
a lot of data.
Yeah, and a lot of suppliers too, I imagine.
Yes, and also, we always have contingency, just like we have in a home budget. We always have contingency. We never know if we're gonna get a special ed student move in. We never know if something has to be repaired suddenly in the school district. So we always have to have contingency. We just have to. But, if something big happened, and we could not fund it from the operating budget, that's what we have fund balance for. And we would come back, lucky enough, we haven't had to do it, but we could come back here, to the Board of Education and we would get authorization to use fund balance to fund it if it was necessary. So you don't want to be too close because you don't want to end up there. But you want to have reserves, you want to have some fund balance, God forbid something like that. And it has happened in some cases.
It happened in Sandy.
Yeah, and it's happened just on a regular operate, without some disaster, it's happened. Sometimes you get an influx of students and they need to put a new class in. I've seen that happen. in
Special
my other-
education students in the
Yeah.
district who are already placed in out of district placement.
As it
And-
relates to the transportation budget, you mentioned earlier about the McKinney-Vento, homeless student, transportation. Are we still in a McKinney-Vento situation for anyone Sandy related?
I don't think they're any Sandy related.
Not Sandy related, but we do have a few dental students. Any other questions, Mr. Volkman?
No other questions other than, it's terrific as I listen to the questions that come from our community members. It reassured me every year how much that Jackie, you've taught me as being on the board and, our members of the board, because it's just like it lights up. So not only will you are a great business administrator. You're also a great teacher. So thank you for that. I just wanted to pass that comment.
Great job.
If I could just say that I think Mrs. Creo is amazing, you know that, she's done a fabulous job, but the decision, you know, the board had asked us to come in below the cap, understanding where we were, what the economic situation could be in the community, the impact of COVID on, and not knowing, but we know that many people were hurting in the community, but to bring in a budget 1 full percentage point under the cap is a huge, it's a huge feat. So I really want to thank them for, I think we should be so proud of this budget. To bring it in at 1.6 tax levy cap is really remarkable, and it's way below what we could have brought budgeted, and yet we're still expanding some programs. We're maintaining everything that we already have, and so this is a great job, Jackie, and thank you to the board for the direction that you've provided us, and I think we should really be proud of where the budget we're presenting. I think it's huge.
All right. Well, thank you.
Okay.
Excellent job.
I would work on.
Yes, executive session.
Okay. Okay, at this time, I'd like to make a motion to the board that we go back into executive session. And a motion to approve. So moved by Mr. O'Hagan, second. By Ms. McNally. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming out tonight. And again, this presentation will be on live. The live stream continues on our website throughout. If anybody didn't get the opportunity, please tell our community members to please visit. Thank you again.